What happens if the power grid collapses? It seems that all over the world these days, major power outages are happening without warning. They last for days, weeks, or even months. Sometimes power failures may be caused by extreme weather conditions, a system overload, or a serious grid fault. In other cases, it could be a malicious actor. However, a potential collapse of the national electricity grid is something we should all be preparing for. This can be done on an individual and community level. So what happens if the power grid collapses? How likely is a power grid collapse? Power outages are on the rise in the USA, which experiences them more frequently than any other developed nation. Other nations with aging infrastructure are equally vulnerable. In 2015, a leading energy analyst claimed that there was a more than 50% chance of a total national grid collapse in South Africa within 5 years. To date, the country has escaped such a catastrophe, but the risk remains high. So although we take our power supply for granted, a world without electricity is no longer unthinkable. In this video, we'll consider some of the likely consequences of a power grid collapse that takes weeks or months to restore. We also anticipate what might happen to help you prepare and protect your family until the service is back to normal. Impacts on infrastructure. When considering what happens when the power grid collapses, a key impact will be in the infrastructure that supports daily life. We consider a number of impacts of an electricity grid collapse on critical infrastructure. Food stocks and supply infrastructure. Global, national, and local supply chains rely on electronic communications. Food suppliers would immediately be unable to make deliveries, send or receive payments, and monitor stocks. Stores will have some goods in stock, but these could run out within a couple of days at most due to increased demand. People would panic on seeing empty shelves and buy up whatever's available. Consider the scenes at the start of the recent pandemic lockdowns. People emptied the stores when they needed adequate supplies to shield themselves against long-term shortages. Banking. While some banks may be able to operate on backup power to some extent, if telecommunications aren't operating, the entire system may be impacted. Within the first few hours, there's likely to be a run on cash, as ATMs and electronic payments will be unavailable. Banks may also implement rationing of cash, further leading to panic. Within a couple of days at most, banks will have run out of cash and be unable to have more delivered. Electronic salary payments won't be paid, or, if they are credited to accounts before the power fails, they won't be accessible as there will be no cash left. Likewise, those relying on government support to sustain themselves will not be able to access cash for their basic needs. Even when power is restored, it will take time to clear the huge backlog of delayed transactions. Internet connectivity. Networks are likely to shut down within the first 6 to 24 hours. What happens if the power grid collapses? No internet, no social media, no way to stay connected with friends and family. In addition, none of the usual sources of information, TV, radio, Twitter, or online news will be available to provide updates on the situation, adding to an atmosphere of uncertainty and fear. If the government does manage to relay messages in the first few hours, these will likely be designed to calm the situation, rather than to provide accurate updates. Telecomms. It's likely that even if the networks remain online for a couple of hours after the collapse, they may crash due to overload as people desperately seek to contact and locate family and friends. It's also likely that access will almost immediately be limited to emergency calls as local and national governments seek to conserve resources. While you may have external chargers for your mobile devices, these are unlikely to be sufficient for more than a couple of days at most, and once they're drained, your cell phones and tablets will be useless. Transport. In urban areas, traffic lights and warning systems will stop working immediately. Roads will quickly become jammed with people trying to reach home, as well as vehicles heading away from the city. Familiar routes and shortcuts may become blocked or impassable. When there are accidents, police and medical teams, already overwhelmed, will be delayed in reaching the scene. Frustrated and panicked drivers might abandon their cars and attempt to reach their destination on foot. For example, parents will seek to collect their children from school and get them safely home as soon as possible. Empty cars will create even more congestion, and the streets may become crowded with pedestrians. Over the following days, queues will grow at gas stations. Modern pumps need power to run, although some older facilities may still have hand pumps. In the US, companies with more than 10 stations in a single county are required to have portable gasoline-powered generators as backup. However, smaller stations without this equipment will be unable to supply fuel. Motorists will roam in search of fuel, which, if available at all, is likely to be tightly rationed. This may result in anger and frustration. And although fuel may still be available at depots, reordering may not be possible, and deliveries may not be able to get to where they're needed. Within a few days, vehicles will run out of fuel and be unable to secure further supplies. The option of leaving cities to travel to less densely populated areas will cease to exist. Water. The water distribution system requires electric pumps to distribute water from reservoirs into homes and businesses. Without power, the supply might run out in a day or two. In rural areas, it may be possible to access water from boreholes and storage tanks, but in urban areas, water will soon become a major concern. Medical care. Some medical centers may have generators that could keep them open for perhaps a few days, but others won't be able to function at all. Medical personnel may not be able to reach their workplace, so those who continue to work will be under extreme pressure, especially as many treatments will not be available after the generators cease to function. Anything other than emergencies will likely not be attended to conserve whatever power is available. In addition, stocks of medications will eventually run out. While pharmacies and clinics will have supplies available on day one of the outage, they won't be able to reorder when these run low, and deliveries may be impossible. People will seek to secure additional supplies of the drugs they'll need for the duration of the emergency. This unplanned surge in demand could lead to unexpected shortages within a short time, resulting in severe consequences for the medical and emotional health of patients and their families. Security. The police will be at full stretch trying to control the situation, and contacting them for assistance will be difficult or impossible after the first couple of days. The government will likely draft in the army to maintain calm on the streets and deter looters, who may take full advantage of the abandoned homes and vehicles. Employees of private security firms may be unable to reach their workplaces, so businesses and households will become more vulnerable to attack. Home and commercial security systems, including smart locks, alarms, and outdoor lighting, will cease to function. Crime is likely to rise as people become increasingly desperate about how to ensure the survival of their families, and opportunists take advantage of newly vulnerable homes and buildings. Trash collection. As trash remains uncollected for weeks on end, rats and other pests will thrive to present an ever-increasing risk to health, especially in urban areas. Sewerage. Sewage systems require pumps to function, so these may fail after a few days. In addition, sewage will back up in low-lying areas, inside homes, or even onto the streets. Communities. Entire social structures, such as local councils and government departments, including educational institutions, will be unable to operate. Even if employees can get to their workplace, it will be all but impossible to function without access to networks. How to prepare for a power grid collapse. Clearly, it makes sense to prepare to mitigate the effects of a potential long-term national power grid collapse. An appropriate response will depend on many factors. However, it is possible to identify some good practices. Virtually anyone can adopt these to prepare for life without power. They will help you think about what preparation you need and what your priorities should be in the vital first few hours. Emergency plan with family. This is the most critical action. When the power fails without warning, widespread confusion and panic will ensue. Help your family cope with the situation by letting them know what is likely to happen and how you're able to deal with it. How will they know that the national grid has failed? What is the first thing they should do? What will each family member be responsible for? Who will collect the kids from school or head to a gas station? Who will check on the elderly neighbor? Ensure you share enough information with your kids. This will help them to feel confident about what they should do. Also, ensure them that they'll be in safe hands. Water supply. Suitable containers, a backup water supply, and a supply of water purification tablets can help ensure the water you're drinking is clean. Store as much water as you can in any container you have available, including the bathtub, before supplies run dry. Drinking water is your top priority, more important than cooking or even cleaning. Food supply. Note how long your freezer stays cold without power. So don't overstock and use up the oldest items first. Have a supply of foods with a long shelf life, dry and canned goods, which will last the duration of the outage already in stock. Buy more food if you don't have enough in store, but avoid overbuying perishable goods which you'll have to discard later. Banking. Keep an emergency supply of cash hidden safely in your home. Opt for lower value bills that you can exchange for goods easily. Your immediate action will be: try and access your cash from the bank before it ceases to operate. There will be a run on cash in the first couple of days. However, it's likely to lose its value fast as essential commodities such as food and water become in short supply. Telecomms. Get your kids to imagine life without connectivity, so they won't feel totally lost when they experience it for the first time. Try a day without power and let them start to understand what it will mean. A battery-operated radio may be the only source of news, so it could be a wise investment. Also, become familiar and equip yourself with other methods of communication, including satellite phones and radio. If email and phones are still working for the first couple of hours, contact family and friends. Contact any community groups in your neighborhoods to ensure you're not isolated. The group can also provide assistance to the vulnerable. Transport. Keep a supply of fuel handy in a garage or storeroom if you have one. Also, check out some alternative routes to home from work and school so you can try and avoid blocked routes. Your immediate action will be: fill your vehicle if possible, and, if allowed, buy additional fuel in other containers. The most common advice is to leave densely populated areas. Head away from the city to a predetermined location. For the majority of urban residents, this might not be an option if you wait too long. First, they'll have nowhere to go, and booking accommodation won't be possible. Secondly, the roads might be jammed and potentially dangerous. In this case, focus on getting everyone home safely. Then park the car to be accessed quickly if you need to move out of your home fast. Medical care. Ensure you have a well-stocked first aid kit with adequate supplies for the entire family. If possible, get to know any doctors and nurses in your area with their consent. They may be able to help in case of an emergency. Your immediate action will be: if possible, replenish your supplies of essential medications immediately, and prioritize keeping any that are heat-sensitive cool. Refuse collection. Ensure you have enough refuse bags to last for several months, bearing in mind that you won't be shopping or discarding the same amount of waste as usual. Get into the habit of separating your garbage. Also consider how you can dispose of meat, fruit, and vegetables without attracting vermin, which could present a health hazard. Sewerage. Buy a large bucket to store wastewater for flushing. If the toilet stops working, consider how you will dispose of human waste safely. One option may be to bury it in the garden. Immediate action will be: begin to use wastewater to flush the toilet. So begin to use wastewater from washing dishes, etc. for this purpose. Not flushing at all risks clogging the drains, which can start to present a health hazard. Use only one toilet to minimize the amount of water needed and keep it functioning properly. Communities. Get to know your neighbors and be active in your local area. Raise the possibility of an emergency and contribute to the response planning. Your immediate action will be: make contact with local community groups and put your emergency plan in action. Decide on a focal point for the community to become the coordination center for communication and assistance. Reach out to neighbors to ensure they are okay. Entertainment. Entertainment may not seem like a major concern when the power grid collapses, but people have become accustomed to using social media and streaming services for entertainment. We're not accustomed to handling long periods without these distractions. When the power is off, we'll need to avoid creating a boring and negative atmosphere in our homes. Even though schools will be closed, kids need to be stimulated by constant activity. They also need to burn off energy and take the pressure off their stressed-out parents. Have plenty of board games to play inside and let all the family enjoy learning them. Also, get some simple outdoor equipment. If it's safe to go outside, everyone can enjoy some fresh air and physical exercise. Encourage your kids to have media-free hobbies which they can continue to enjoy. Adults also need to consider how they can pass the time enjoyably without power. Gather supplies of anything you'll need to have them on hand. In this video, we discussed about what happens if the power grid collapses, and also suggested practical solutions to tackle such a situation in the time of crisis. If you find this video helpful, please subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon for more valuable content. Until next time, bye!